Yes. I'm just listening to Ali's issue of how do you tap into people's imagination and possibilities. What does the vice president bring to this campaign? And it's a campaign that is going to be so truncated.
Jose, I couldn't agree more with everything Ali was saying there, and she's speaking from such great experience in her own writing and reporting as well. Look, I think Harris's backers have made very clear she brings a lot to this campaign right now because she's been the vice president. For all of those delegates who are now pledged to President Biden, for everyone who backed him during the primary campaign, they were backing Harris too. That's a point that I hear again and again. So the same legislative record that he has been running on, calling himself one of the most consequential presidents of modern time, being called that by historians who look at his record of bipartisan work, Harris was a part of that as well. The part of the campaign that she has bridged for him and will now be able to sort of carry forward in a different direction if she is to become the nominee is that she shores up a lot of places where President Biden had previously been weak. We've already seen her campaigning on college campuses, spending a lot of time in swing states, a lot of those suburban women voters that we know there's been some weakness there and a coveted voting bloc. She can help pick up some of the slack there as well. And let's also not forget that she has been one of the most potent and powerful messengers on what's been one of the most potent and powerful messages for Democrats that helped them to avoid a Republican red wave in 2022, and that is the issue of abortion rights. Being able to have her as the primary messenger at the top of the ticket, I think, makes that even a stronger message potentially for Democrats who think that that will be and continue to be a strong message ahead in this campaign and leading up to November. But the timing here is absolutely critical. As my colleagues here have been reporting, they want to get this wrapped up before the convention. There are those two possible paths, an open convention or virtual roll call, but you've got ballot deadlines in August for some places. You've got early voting beginning in September for some places. This is something Democratic sources are telling me they want to get wrapped up and wrapped up soon.
Tyler, we had reported previously that one of the things that was happening behind the scenes prior to President Biden's announcement was that he was looking to his team for some polling on how Kamala Harris would stack up against Donald Trump. As far as we have seen, many of the polls suggest, these national surveys recently, that they suggest that numbers for Kamala Harris are very similar to the numbers that President Biden was seeing against Donald Trump. What are we learning about the vice president's strategy now going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think it's one of the things that gave President Biden some reservations about stepping aside and anointing Vice President Harris as his choice to take over the Democratic ticket. And I think we'll see in the coming days and weeks about, the sort of aggressive campaign strategy that Harris takes. I think we should expect to see her out a lot more and have a pretty robust campaign schedule. I also think one of the things Democrats are excited about is this contrast that she can draw with former President Trump, this prosecutor versus felon idea. Obviously, Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of California, was a district attorney before that, and really rose to fame among Democrats nationally when she aggressively questioned Trump cabinet officials and others during her short stint in the Senate, some of those high-profile televised hearings. She really developed a lot of fans and supporters because of her performances there. So I think we should expect to see her on the campaign trail really going after Trump. We already saw in one of her initial statements yesterday calling out Project 2025, this policy document created by some of Trump's allies outlining what his potential second term would look like. It's a document that Democrats think will be very animating for their voters. And so I think she will, really try to take that case and prosecute the case. And I was someone that was out on the trail with her, with Ali in 2019 when she was running for the Democratic primary. And you can hear some of those early campaign events then, obviously not a successful campaign, and she dropped out before the Iowa caucuses, but really framed herself as someone that could take on Donald Trump using her prosecutorial skills to make the case to the American people. I also think the last few years serving as Joe Biden's running mate, giving her that record to run on, will allow her to use some of the popular policies we've seen voters say they like but we're not attributing to Joe Biden. I think there'll be a concerted effort for her to try to take credit for some of those policies. And again, really another big issue for her will be abortion rights, trying to win over female voters, particularly suburban women who prove to be critical each election cycle in some of those key battleground states.
Julian, you were among one of the first voices to call on President Biden to step aside. What are your thoughts now? And I'm just wondering, the process that has to go forward now, how do you see its transparency?
Well, Hassan, I mean, first, as many people have said, President Biden deserves a lot of credit, not only for being a historic president with tremendous accomplishments in these last 3.5 years, but also for something we rarely see these days, the selfless act in politics and the political sacrifice that he's made for the betterment of the country and certainly for the Democratic Party. What we've seen in the last 24 hours is a shot in the arm to this campaign. Kamala Harris has already brought a lot of energy. She's consolidating support. Already more than $50 million has been raised in small dollar donations for the campaign. It's been reported, over 100 phone calls to leaders across the country, and that is showing in the support that's being voiced all over the country right now. So she's off to a very strong start. Of course, there's going to be a process. If for no other reason, then there has to be. Those delegates ultimately have to vote. They have a vote in the process of selecting a nominee. So the process is all about scoping out when somebody that wants to throw their name in, we know that she's in there, is going to speak to the delegates, persuade them. They vote before the convention comes, and then that will be ratified at the convention. I mean, for all intents and purposes, though, what we've seen in the last 24 hours, the support that she's gotten from other names that have been mentioned as potential presidential candidates means that, you know, I don't think that she's going to have significant competition here. She's the very likely nominee for the Democratic nomination. And I think what you're seeing is the Democratic Party rallying around her, saying, this is our candidate. She stands a good job. She stands a good shot at beating Donald Trump in November. Everybody needs to get behind her. And that's going to give her, I think, a good shot at beating him in November.